Hey guys, I'm back, and I've got a cool unit for you here. This time we're gonna pull out the gun show. Never mind, ain't that big. But these guns I'm gonna show you are. We're gonna talk a lot about weaponry, and I know sometimes it feels like, well, I've already done some references. I've learned about references for machines and for this and that. Never have enough references. Anybody who tells you to draw without references, especially mechs, they've lost it. Use references. Use them until you don't need them as much, but you're still going to need them. Okay? So it's important that we have this wealth of references that we're moving forward with, right? That's what this course is going to be for you. A good chunk of it is about references and understanding how to use them. Weapons. Let's get to it. Okay. So first off, we're going to start with a bunch of machine guns. There's a few things that, when we're talking about a gun, we're pretty simple here. We've got, a firing mechanism, and we've got a barrel that everything comes out of, right? Okay, so let's set that aside. That's what we know, right? There's some things that I think are important. End of the barrel, sometimes like having some details of like kind of venting holes. Those are important. So we can add that type of thing into the barrel. We could add a staggered or tapered barrel into it, right? We can add venting through another section of it to take some of the pressure away as that round gets expelled, right? We can add, and this is a big one, how the munitions are added into the gun itself. So, we've got like in this case, this is a mounted gun here, right? So it's coming down here into this mounting apparatus, right? And it can pivot around. Maybe back here is actually, I like this design of the handles, and then there might be something like the pistol grip, the trigger below, right? Depending on how, I think actually on this one, the way the handles are designed, the trigger is right there, right? This one's got a same as you would find on a handgun or any semi-automatic or something like that, right? A normal pistol grip to it, right? But for me, how the munitions are fed into here, so they're either in this case they're traditional bullet rounds, right? And they're being fed in. This is a munitions box, or they can be fed in. Sometimes you can get like a band of munitions being fed in out of a secondary location, right? So I think when we talk about machine guns, I want to focus on, the details of the housing. You want some type of aiming section to it at 2 points at least, so you can line them up, right? You want some type of section to feed the munitions into. You want the barrel with maybe exhaust ports or something like that, venting ports, right? And you want a firing mechanism. Okay, so let's see. Actually, I should have probably done this in red. Firing mechanism, munitions entry, aiming, venting, right? For a machine gun, that's kind of some of the basics. You can get into funkier machine guns like this chain gun, and instead of one barrel, this one has maybe anywhere from, depending on the chain gun itself, anywhere from 5 to a dozen. Some of them have an open casing like this that you can see the individual barrels, and they go around a turning housing, right? Or a turning piston inside the housing, and you can see how the end of the barrel here has this ability to vent, right? Other ones that I've seen on actual battleships and stuff like that, the whole housing is just, it's covered up to a certain point. You won't, all you see is this stream of bullets coming out, what looks like kind of like a block or something like that, but what in reality it's this inside, right? So we can adjust that. Here's how to hold it. So in this case, we're talking about a mounting system, right? That can go on top of a mech that somebody can use. These other ones are either handheld. So I'm going to add one more detail: the mounting or holding. Okay, maybe I should label this stuff for you. Trigger, aim, feeding ammunition, venting, and hold, or the mount. That goes to here and goes to here, right? So this one, obviously, this could be on a wall or on the ground, right? This one, the user holds this with one hand and grabs this one with the other. Now, when I was talking about this large one, I was thinking of it like being mounted on top of a mech or something like that. How cool that would look, right? But you know how what would look even cooler? A mech holding this chain gun. How badass would that be, right? Like, that's insane. Okay, so think about that. How a mech would hold the chain gun. I'm kind of doing this, right? And then how would ammunition feed? Maybe from a pack in the back of the mech or something, right? Okay, so we're getting a lot of ideas here. Next one we're moving into is like rocket launchers and launchers in general. This is a handheld one. It's pretty simple. It looks like a gun, right? You've got the pistol grip and everything, right? We've got a little stance, but this is the actual launcher itself, and then the rocket sits inside with a propulsion here and comes out, right? That is exactly what's happening inside of here. There's many, many rockets, and you can even see this. It gets into a missile system, that these are self-propelled, right? The projectiles of the machine guns are launched as a projectile, right? These often, as we move up in this, have their own mechanism of propulsion. So what you can do with these, mount them all over your mech. You can mount them in units. Like you could think of how a plane has them mounted under the wings and everything like that. The only thing about this is often in a design issue is a refill, like a resupply. Once you shoot off a couple of these missiles, how do you fill them back up, right? Does somebody got to come and clamp them onto your back again or something if you're doing that transformer thing, right? So think about resupplying here, right? But basically, these are pretty cool. When we're looking at missile systems and stuff, missiles can kind of be clamped anywhere, and then if it's an arm, you can launch it off the arm or something. So they can either be exposed or covered. But you want to hint that there's something very badass about to come out of there. Okay. I probably should have thrown artillery on with the machine guns up above, because again, this is it's a propelled shell, right? We're looking at some theme in muzzle design here and stuff like that. This venting off, right? So just make sure that when we talk about these designs, as I said before, other designers have gone through this for a reason, right? Form follows function. The function of these is to send a massive projectile into an enemy, right? And you need to have certain things being able to come away from it, whether it's pieces of a rocket or whether it's exhaust or whatever it is, pressure, to have that projectile go in the direction you want it to go. So take a look at what some of these designers have already done and see how you can incorporate that in your designs, right? Okay, let's get into a little bit of high-tech stuff. These are fictional weapons. Somebody else designed these, and I just put them on the sheet. What does it look like? Well, they look like machine guns, right? They look like there could be a round in here somewhere or something like that. This looks like laser sights, maybe, or this might be a secondary launcher. This looks like, remember when we talked about different joints? This looks like one of the slide joints, like of a shotgun, right? So maybe this could be pumped back and forth, and you can do that. This is maybe the rounds down here for this. So, even though we're looking at something futuristic, we're still looking at how do we hold it? How do we shoot it? How do we aim it? How do we feed weapons or feed munitions into it and stuff like that, right? So as we're looking into this futuristic thing, what are the munitions? And how do we deal with the functionality of this design, right? So here, this person, what they did was, here's one munition, and you know what? I suspect this is another firing thing, right? So maybe another second round or a second source of munitions go in here, right? This looks like it only fires one. This one's harder, but we've got some themes going on. We've got sighting mechanisms, right? Like this one doesn't. That's a little strange. But again, these are designs supposedly from the future and stuff like that. So you'll see some consistency in this. How do we hold it? How do we shoot it? Right? What's going and what's coming out of it? Right? Those are pretty consistent. These are handheld ones that maybe your mechs could be holding and shooting and stuff like that, right? We'll practice drawing them in just a little bit when we get into application onto the mech. But this is more about gathering resources, right? So think about this. When we are going to draw this, though, what would this look like? How would we sketch this out? Well, what would we do? It'd be a long rectangle or something, right? And then we'd start to break down the form, right? We'd start to say, okay, well, this is where this housing goes. This is where this part goes, right? And we'd start to draw it all out and say, okay, well, this is what this kind of looks like. So the thing is, this is somebody else's design, right? And I think they're great designs, but I kind of want you doing your own designs. So what I'd rather you do is say, okay, well, I'm going to kind of use this in the same perspective that that this person has done theirs. But what would I do different? Well, maybe I'd have a circular end to it, and maybe I'd have two projectile shafts coming out of it, right? So how would that look? Well, maybe there would be some bulging going along this part, and maybe this would come up here or something, right? And maybe this whole housing would end there, right? And so this is coming back like this, and maybe I want a second grip down here for this part of the hand, right? And so, you know, you start to design and say, okay, well, I like how they have this handheld section here, so I might take some of this, right? And the shoulder mount and then that. And that's what I want you to kind of do. Is this isn't really a massive homework assignment getting you to draw exactly what's on this page. What it is grabbing elements of these weapons. So if you just draw a rectangle and say, okay, well, how am I going to make this rectangle a gun? Well, here's the main housing, for example, right? Here's going to be where it goes up against the shoulder. Here's where it's going to be, where it's being held. Here's a secondary holding point, maybe a secondary firing point. Maybe these, like we can use some of that stuff from the shells, right? Maybe there's another munitions going in here, and maybe even like a old style Kalashnikov. There's a feed of bullets coming into this top section here that come out here, right? Where's my aim? My aim is here. And do you know what I mean? And then that's what I want you doing. So when we're looking at weapon design, I want you looking at what we've covered here. Looking at how it's being triggered, how we're feeding munitions in, whether they're lasers or whatever. Does it need if it's lasers, does it need a power source, right? A battery pack. How do you protect that battery pack, right? Does it need any venting? How do you hold it? How do you aim it, right? I want you kind of addressing some of these things. I feel bad not saying, well, you have to redraw this. Okay, here, this is me officially saying it. Redraw every one of these. Okay, that's your assignment. Now, that out of the way, what I'd really rather you do is just start to take some of these elements of design and jump in and make your own stuff, right? Because we're talking about mechs. Mechs are futuristic, right? That's what I want from you. I want you thinking, okay, well, here's a couple designs I really like. I'm moving to the future with it. In the end, I posted up a few things from the past. The reason I put the catapult, the trebuchet, battering ram, all this kind of stuff, siege weapons and everything, is because I think some of this can still carry forward in our design. Imagine a battering ram here. You know, I've got this battering ram, right? Imagine that, but it's a piston shaft along the forearm of a siege mech, right? So this mech is like slow and lumbering. It walks up, bonko, 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 and it punches through whatever the hell it needs to punch through, right? So you could take the battering ram design, maybe pivot joints or something like that just kind of rock back and forth, and it just kong, 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 and that's what it does, right? And it's a heavy mech because it's braced for that function, right? I don't know if we're going to use a lot of these medieval designs in what you're doing and stuff, right? But I wanted to include them here because I think no matter where you're getting designs from, whether it's a sword, right? Whether it's a gun, whether it's a laser, whether you're looking at some sci-fi movie and trying to grab from there, right? Doesn't really matter. look at the function of it, what you're trying to do with it, and then think of how you can create or implement these elements of realistic design, functional design, actually that's a better one, functional design into the weapon system of your mech. Okay? So technically I'm giving you homework. Draw all of this. But really, what I'm saying for you for homework is take important elements from each of these weapon systems and try to make something yourself. And I think it's going to look pretty badass. So show me when you got it.